The church smelled faintly of lilies and dust. Morning light slipped through the stained glass, painting weak colors across the wooden pews. I sat alone in the front row, my hands folded tight, my heart trying to stay steady. The mahogany casket stood a few feet away, closed, polished, and final. Mrs. Hart, Ethan, the young funeral director, leaned toward me with quiet hesitation. "Would you like to wait a few more minutes before we begin?" "No," I said. My voice sounded stronger than I felt. Thomas never liked delays. He nodded, adjusting his tie, clearly uncomfortable with the near-empty room. Only the sound of the ceiling fan broke the silence. Reverend Mills stepped forward, shuffling papers, his glasses sliding down his nose. He'd never met Thomas, but he spoke like he had, using phrases that could have fit anyone. "Thomas Hart was a good man," he began softly. "A man who lived with kindness, who cared for those around him." I stared at the flowers instead, white lilies, too formal, too detached. Thomas would have wanted the wild yellow roses from our garden, the ones he trimmed every spring without fail. As the Reverend continued, I noticed the emptiness more than his words. Whole rows of seats, our family's seats, untouched, unneeded. The emptiness pressed in on me like a weight I couldn't shift. Ethan approached again after the brief service. "Would you like to say a few words, Mrs. Hart?" I shook my head. No, he knew everything I wanted to say. We walked together to the burial site. The sky was that flat gray that can't decide whether to rain or not. The wind caught at my coat, but I barely felt it. When the casket was lowered, I bent down, took a handful of soil, and let it fall. The hollow sound of dirt on wood echoed louder than the Reverend's closing prayer. Back at the car, I hesitated before opening the door. My phone buzzed inside my purse once, then again. 2 notifications, both from Instagram. I unlocked the screen. Marcus, my son, had posted a photo from a rooftop bar, champagne raised, city skyline behind him. His caption read, "New beginnings, big wins, cheers to success." The timestamp said 10:04 a.m. That was exactly when the Reverend had said, "May he rest in peace." A second post appeared below it. Lena, my daughter, laughing in sunglasses, the ocean behind her, a tall glass of something bright in her hand. "Weekend freedom," her caption said. A small heart emoji. My breath caught. For a second, I couldn't move. Then, as if my body knew before my mind did, I turned off the phone and sat in silence. I drove home without the radio on. The road felt endless, gray stretching into gray. Inside the house, the first thing I saw was Thomas's gardening gloves on the counter. They still held their shape, the leather darkened by years of use. His coffee mug, black with a chipped handle, sat on the table beside the folded newspaper from 3 days before. He'd always leave it there for me, saying, "You never know what good news might be hiding on the back page." I pressed my palm to the mug. It was cold now. The living room was too still, too neat. His favorite chair faced the television, remote resting on the arm, perfectly aligned like he'd placed it with care. The little brass key he used to keep on a nail by the back door still hung there, catching the dull light. I sank into the couch. My body felt heavy, as if grief had its own gravity. "Mom?" I said out loud to myself, realizing no one would call me that today. The quiet pressed in harder. They weren't here. Not Marcus. Not Lena. I could almost hear Thomas's voice in my head, that warm baritone with the gentle humor. "Don't be too hard on them, Evie. They're busy with their own lives." But this wasn't busy. This was a choice. I picked up my phone again, against my better judgment. Another notification. A text from Marcus. "Sorry, Mom, couldn't make it. Tight schedule. Call you soon." No punctuation, no warmth. Then Lena's message. "Mom, I hope it went okay. I'll visit when I'm back in town. Love you." I stared at those words until they blurred. Love you. Empty words typed between drinks and laughter. I whispered, "He raised you better than this." The words caught in my throat. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and tried to breathe. But the image of their smiling faces over their drinks wouldn't leave my mind. How could they? How could they look so alive when he was being lowered into the ground? I sat by the window looking out at the roses. They were still blooming, stubbornly defiant against the cold. Thomas used to say they were proof that beauty doesn't need permission. It just grows where it's loved. My eyes drifted to the small wooden cabinet near the hallway, the one with all the old folders and documents. Inside was the will we'd updated a few years ago. I thought about it then. Not out of anger, but out of something quieter. A kind of resolve I didn't fully understand yet. I whispered to the empty room, "Maybe it's time I look at that tomorrow." A creak sounded from the porch as the wind pushed against the screen door. It reminded me of Thomas coming home after long days in the garden, dirt under his nails, that same gentle smile. I closed my eyes, letting his voice echo in my head. "You take care of them, Evie, even when they forget to take care of you." I wanted to keep that promise. I really did, but the sight of those empty seats, that was something I couldn't unsee. When night fell, I left the lights off. The house glowed only from the street lamp outside. I stood by the window, watching shadows stretch across the living room. Grief didn't feel like crying anymore. It felt like standing in a house that no longer knew how to sound alive. And beneath that grief, something else was growing. Not anger, something colder, quieter. A slow freeze that started deep in my chest and moved outward, turning pain into purpose. I turned off my phone completely, placed it face down on the table, and whispered to the dark, "Tomorrow, I'll find that will." Then I walked to the hallway, paused by the cabinet, and rested my hand on its wooden edge. The air in the house seemed to hold its breath. For the first time since the funeral began, I felt steady, not healed, but sure. I whispered, "If they couldn't come to say goodbye, maybe they don't deserve what he left behind." I went to bed with that thought tucked under the blanket beside my grief. The clock ticked loudly in the dark, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat. And in that stillness, a single question refused to leave me. The kettle's last whistle had barely faded when someone knocked. "Evelyn, it's Rosa. Come in." "Mrs. Hart, I brought some soup." "You didn't have to." "Thank you. Figured you might not feel like cooking." "I'm not hungry." "You never were the first week." "I'll be all right." "You sure?" "Yes." She set the container on the counter like it was something fragile. Her hands smelled faintly of lavender. She looked at the living room, at the chair with the remote sitting where Thomas last left it. "He loved that chair," she said. "He did. You two were good together." "We were." "You want to tell me about him?" "I would. But I'm not ready to sort through stories yet." "You don't have to." "I know." Rosa lingered, folding her coat over her arm. I watched her watch the house. She'd been our neighbor for 20 years, a steady presence with casseroles and a quick call when the mail piled up. She knew the small facts, the garden, the way Thomas whistled when he mowed, but she also knew the quiet pieces. How he left the brass key on the back door every night. How he'd fix the screen door hinge even if I asked him not to. "He left his gloves on the counter," I said, surprising myself by saying it. "He always did," Rosa replied, like a comfort. "I found a folder," I said, because I needed to say it out loud. "Old receipts, tuition checks, renovation bills. Oh, I thought I'd just check the will. You know, to be practical. You doing okay with that?" "I don't know yet." Rosa squeezed my hand. "When you're ready, let me help." Her kindness slowed me down enough to breathe. I walked to the wooden cabinet, fingers finding the dent where a small hammer had bashed it years ago. Inside the drawer, the will sat in a clear envelope. Next to it, a brown folder bulging with paper, decades of our life in numbers. "Look at this," I said, spreading a stack across the table. "You did all this," Rosa said, voice soft. "You both did." "We did," I corrected. There were tuition receipts for Marcus's MBA. There was a check for Lena's wedding venue, a price that still made my stomach tighten. There were invoices from the contractor who had added the sunroom. The receipts for the hospital bills when Thomas was in and out last winter, the transfer to Marcus for a business startup that flopped, the loan to Lena when she'd needed a down payment. Each paper a small act that had once felt like love. Now they looked like a trail. I sat down hard. The paper crackled. "They saw this as a standing offer," I said. "Not as help, but as a guarantee. People take what's offered. Sometimes they don't see the weight behind it. Sometimes they forget there's a person with weight all along." Rosa left after an hour, promising to drop by later. I locked the door behind her and sat with the papers like a patient who had been given a diagnosis. I dialed Mr. Whitaker. "Whitaker and Sons," his secretary said. "Hello, this is Evelyn Hart." "Mrs. Hart, I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you. I need to see Mr. Whitaker as soon as possible. We have an opening this afternoon at 2. "That will work. Shall I bring the folder?" "Yes, please." The office smelled like leather and old coffee. Mr. Whitaker stood when I walked in, a slim man with kind eyes and a way of making hard things sound manageable. He poured tea and set a legal pad between us. "Evelyn, I'm sorry again." "Thank you. You found the papers?" "Yes. You have questions?" "Many." "Start where it hurts the most." "The will. It names Marcus and Lena equally. That was the plan once. But nothing about who cared for Thomas, or who sat nights in the hospital, or who was here when he needed someone." "That's common language," he said slowly. "Wills typically distribute assets equally unless there's a special clause. I want a special clause. Those are possible. Can I change it? You're the testator's surviving spouse. You can update your own will. You can set up a trust. You can put stipulations, time-based, use-based. You can protect assets from a contest, though nobody can ever remove all contestability. What if they contest? They can try. It will be costly and emotionally draining. But if you make the document clear, and if there's evidence of your intent and your mental capacity, you stand on solid ground." "I don't want to be vindictive," I said. "I want to be fair. Fairness and family history don't always match. You can structure it to honor Thomas's memory, maybe a fund in his name, maybe a trust for someone who cared for him." "I was thinking about Noah," I said, before I could stop myself. "Noah, our grandson, came to the house every week, mowed the lawn, brought groceries, sat with Thomas on bad nights. He was 22, gentle, clear-eyed. He'd never expected anything. He's young," Whitaker said. "But you can set conditions, education, community projects, age-based disbursements." "Could I set up a trust specifically for a community project?" "Absolutely. That can be the cleanest way to ensure legacy is used as intended." He slid a brochure across the table, trusts, wills, contest procedures. The words were technical, but they held a kind of safety I hadn't felt in days. "Why would I do this?" I asked finally. "Isn't this just more legal work when I should be grieving?" "You grieving doesn't mean you have to give away what you and Thomas built," he said. "You can protect it. You can make sure it does what you both wanted." "I keep thinking about those receipts," I said. Every dollar we sent, tuition, loans, felt like an investment in them. But it wasn't always reciprocal. "You helped when they needed it," Whitaker replied. "Now you want to honor what was real. That's not cruel." A silence settled. I felt the steady pulse of resolve again, something colder than grief, but steadier. I thought of Thomas's hands, calloused from planting, steady from years of work. I thought of the brass key on the nail. I thought of the way he smiled when the roses opened in June. "How long will this take?" I asked. "A week to draft, longer to finalize if you add trusts and clauses. And then, if you want, we can set it up so your intent is clear to any judge." "Do it," I said. The word felt strange and right. "Before we go, evidence helps," he said. "Notes, any letters, receipts, what you showed me. Those strengthen your case." "I have them," I said, gesturing to the folder in my bag. "Good, we'll begin drafts today." On the drive home, the town felt the same, but my hands on the steering wheel were steadier. The sunlight found the roses and made them glow. I thought of Noah and the small, careful things he had done. I thought of Marcus and Lena laughing with their drinks. I thought of Thomas's life, of what mattered to him. I set the folder on the kitchen table and let the house breathe around me. The papers were no longer just evidence. They were choices. I could redistribute, redirect, protect. The idea warmed something that had been cold. For the first time since the funeral, a plan sat where rawness had lived. I whispered to the empty room, "If I change the will, can I live with the consequences?" My own voice answered back, steady and small. "I don't know yet, but I have to try." "Mr. Whitaker?" "Evelyn, good to see you. Sit down." "Thank you for seeing me so soon." "You're welcome. First, I'm very sorry for your loss." "Thank you. That means a lot. You brought the folder." "Yes, you've done your homework." "I had to. Start where you need to." I found receipts, checks, years of help. I remember Thomas. Quiet, steady man. He liked order, I said. He liked things that made sense. "What are you thinking?" "I want the will changed." "That's a big step. I know. But I can't ignore what I saw at the funeral. People take what's offered when boundaries aren't clear. They didn't just take money. They took the assumption. Intent matters in court. Clear records help. I want to be clear. You can be. We can draft a trust, specify uses, name beneficiaries, include contingencies. How about protecting it from a contest? Nothing is impossible to challenge, but you can make it harder. A trust with defined purposes and an independent trustee helps. Also, letters of intent, witness statements, records of care, those strengthen your position. I can provide those. You already brought the folder. That helps. Noah, my grandson, was with Thomas more than they were. He sat nights, brought groceries, mowed the lawn. He didn't expect anything. That matters. Courts look at who provided care sometimes, depending on claims. But legally, you have latitude. Could I set the trust to fund a community project in Thomas's name? Absolutely. A charitable trust or a restricted use trust works well. You can name Noah as trustee or beneficiary of a project fund, or name an independent trustee with Noah as project director. I don't want him to be attacked by my own children. We can add protections, staggered distributions, education-only clauses, emergency access for health or schooling, and a spendthrift clause to prevent creditors. What about Marcus and Lena? If they complain, can Whitaker and Sons defend it? We can draft robust language. We can show intent, capacity, and contemporaneous notes. That reduces risk. I'm not trying to spite them. I just want what Thomas valued to continue. That's a reasonable position. A buzz in my bag. I glanced down. A text from Derek. He wanted to know if I was okay. He asked if there were arrangements they could help with. The message sounded polite, like the kind of message you send when you need to be seen as supportive. I have to answer a message, I said, more to steady myself than to excuse the interruption. You should. Derek says he'll help with anything. That's kind. He wasn't at the hospital much, I said. But he's polite. People play many roles. He's Marcus's wife's husband. Derek is family by marriage. His support counts, but the legal reality is different. Of course. Evelyn, tell me what outcome you want, not what you want to punish. I want Thomas's name to mean something. I want a place or a program that reflects how he lived. I want Noah to have the support to run it. And I want the rest protected so no one blames me later. That's clear. We'll draft a trust for a community learning fund in Thomas Hart's name. We'll appoint a trustee. We'll include a clause that prioritizes community projects and education, with Noah as an eligible director. We'll include a contingency if Noah doesn't want it, then funds revert to another charitable use you choose. That sounds right. Now, a practical question. Do you want to notify Marcus and Lena now, or keep this confidential until it's final? I want to do it thoughtfully. Confidential until signed is normal, but keep in mind, secrecy can inflame things if they find out later. I don't want a war, but I can't ignore what I saw at the graveside. You don't have to explain yourself legally. Your paperwork will show your intent. I need to be sure I can live with the choice. I kept thinking about their faces when I found the posts. You won't erase the hurt by changing a document, but you'll protect a legacy. Do you think it's selfish? Not if your goal is stewardship. You're protecting what you and Thomas built for a purpose. He poured tea, hands steady. I watched the steam rise, small and ordinary, and felt a steadiness returning to me. How long to draft? I asked. A few days to prepare a draft, a week to finalize with notarization and witnessing. If you want trusts and trustees named, add more time to coordinate. I want to do it properly. We'll also document your reasoning. We can note his decline, who cared for him, visits, calls, the evidence you gathered tonight. I have the folder with dates and receipts. I kept those for tax reasons. I didn't expect them to become part of this. Keep them close. Also, write a short personal letter explaining why you chose this course. It helps judges understand intent if challenged. A letter. I swallowed. I can do that. You don't need to be angry in it. Tell the truth. What you observed, who helped, what Thomas valued. I'll write it tonight, I said, and meant it. He slid a pen across the pad. Sign here to begin. We'll prepare the draft and call you. Any medical directives or other documents we should update at the same time? Yes, I'll look at those. Good. I'll have a preliminary draft ready in 3 days. Thank you. I don't know if I have the words to say thank you, but you're welcome. You're doing something hard and necessary. We stood. He walked me to the door, his expression kind but businesslike. The waiting room hum was the same as every office. Low, orderly. I felt the legal machinery start to move under my feet, calmer than the swirl of emotions that had carried me in. Outside, the air was crisp. My car looked smaller than it had that morning. I placed my hand on the folder in the passenger seat, as if that touch could make the choice feel less alone. I called Noah on the way home. His voice was bright, surprised. "Grandma, are you okay?" "I'm managing." "Listen, Noah, I may be making some changes to the papers. Nothing for you to worry about, just whatever you need, Grandma, I've got you." "I know you do. Thank you. Do you want me to come by? I can bring those tools, fix the porch step. If you come, bring coffee and your help. I'll be there." I finished the call and looked out at the passing trees. The folder sat between my knees, heavy in a way that felt right. In the car, guilt bubbled up like an old bruise. I loved my children. Of course I did. But love had boundaries, and I kept thinking of the chapel, the empty seats, the way Marcus's post had glowed on my phone like a betrayal. If I changed the will, could I live with the consequences? Would my children hate me? Would they understand later? Would Noah be safe? The questions circled, sharp and restless. I drove home slower than usual, feeling the decision settle into me, not like a blow, but like a careful choice. I set the folder on the kitchen table, opened it, and pulled a pen toward my notebook. The page waited, blank and patient. I whispered to the room, "I'll do this right. For Thomas." Then I began to write the letter Mr. Whitaker suggested, a simple note, honest and precise. The pen scratched, deliberate. Outside, late light folded across the roses that Thomas loved. The house felt too loud when I shut the door. I dropped my keys and reached for the phone without thinking. "Hey, Mom, you home?" The voicemail started in Sophia's smooth voice. "I'm okay, Sophia," she said, immediately polite. "Just checking in. Are you managing? Call me if you need anything." There was a small laugh, the kind people add when they don't know what else to say. I listened twice. She'd asked if I was managing, not how Thomas was. Her voice was careful, like a neighbor at a funeral who wants to be seen as kind without getting close. I set the phone down and swiped open Instagram. My thumb hovered, almost afraid. "Marcus looks great," I heard myself say out loud before I saw the picture. He was at a rooftop bar, tie loosened, a glass in his hand, city lights behind him. "He's celebrating," I read the caption. "Big win, new contract." The timestamp, the same hour the Reverend had said, "May he rest in peace." Below it, Lena, laughing, sunglasses on, a palm tree behind her. "Sea breeze and smiles," she wrote. A heart emoji. The photo was bright and careless. I felt a cold tighten under my ribs. I shouldn't have been surprised. I had known, in a small, sinking way, that their lives ran on different tracks. But seeing it, right when the world was folding in, felt like a slap. I opened the drawer where I kept the folder. The papers rustled like old leaves. I began laying them out on the kitchen table. Receipts, bank transfers, tuition invoices, a signed note for a loan when Marcus started a business, a wire transfer for Lena's necessary renovation. Each paper had a date, a pen stroke, a purpose. Each one traced a map. "You handled so much," I whispered. It sounded like a question to myself. I called Noah. He picked up on the second ring. "Grandma, are you okay?" His voice was soft, a clear place to land. "I'm looking at things," I said. "Do you remember last summer? When you stayed overnight?" "Yeah, took the late shift, didn't I?" Kept him company. He liked when I read the paper out loud. "You brought groceries. You fixed the leaking faucet when the sink was loose. You always told me not to call you Grandma like I was a kid." He laughed quietly. "You okay?" "Noah, did you see him a lot? In these last months?" "I came by most nights when I could. I mowed the lawn when it got long. I drove him to the clinic twice when his back gave out. And I sat with you that one night when he couldn't sleep." "You didn't have to," I said. "You asked me to," he answered simply. "You asked and I came." "I noticed," I said, voice small. "I noticed you. I noticed how you were there." He hesitated. He liked your coffee, you know. Kept asking when you'd make the French roast again. I smiled even though it hurt. He did, didn't he? He did. "Grandma, if you need help with the papers, I'm okay for now. Thank you. I'll call you later? Anytime. I'll stop by tomorrow with a toolbox. Maybe fix that loose porch railing." "Please," I said. "And Noah, thank you." "Gotcha," he said. I hung up and spread the receipts wider, letting them breathe on the table. They looked different in the light, no longer silent tokens of care, but a ledger of assumptions. I could almost trace the way generosity had become a bill of expectations. I thought about every time Thomas had said, "They'll come when they need us," and I had smiled and written another check. There was a knock. I opened the door to find the mailman, then a neighbor at the gate who waved and passed on a bag of groceries. Small kindnesses kept arriving, steady as a slow tide. I thanked them all, but inside I was cataloging. How long were you lending to them? I asked myself. The numbers sat on the kitchen table like a new kind of evidence. Loan for startup, $50,000, I read aloud. Mortgage down payment, $35,000. Wedding deposit, $12,000. I said the numbers like a litany, each one a small betrayal when added up. I called Marcus, hands shaking, but his voicemail answered. I left a message that came out clipped and controlled. "Marcus, it's Mom. I hope things are going well. Call me when you can." No response, not yet. I opened one envelope and found a promissory note with his signature, dated 3 years ago. I had remembered giving the money because he'd said it was urgent. He'd promised to pay me back. "Why do you keep doing this?" I asked the empty house. "Why do you keep giving them more?" Rosa had been right. People take what's offered. But there was another shape to it. When you give without conditions for decades, the line between helping and enabling blurs. My hands trembled at the thought that Thomas and I had created a safety net that others treated like a guarantee. I sat down, let my forehead rest on the cool wood of the table. I thought about Mr. Whitaker's office and the words he'd said. Trust, intent, protective clauses. Legal language had sounded sterile, but now it felt like armor I could wear to protect something of value beyond money. The afternoon sun slanted through the blinds. Dust motes drifted, small and indifferent. I called Whitaker to confirm the draft. I told him I'd collected everything he asked for. He said the trust could name Noah as steward of a community fund in Thomas's name, with staggered payouts and protections. "That could work," I murmured. "I'll write it so it's clear," he said. "Intent matters. Records matter." I felt a thin anger spike, then settle into something steadier. Resolve. It wasn't about punishing Marcus and Lena. It was about making sure a name meant more than an empty chair and a line on a balance sheet. I scrolled back to Marcus's feed. Another photo, another glass, another life. A message popped up. Sophia this time, a voicemail left earlier. "Evelyn, hope you're managing. If I can drop by, say the time." Again, her tone was smooth, almost rehearsed. I put the phone down and dialed Noah back. "Grandma, you okay?" "I think so," I said. "Listen, would you be willing to take on something? Not now, later. If I set up something in Thomas's name, would you help run it?" "Yeah," he said immediately. "I'd do that." "You sure?" "I'm sure." That certainty felt like a small, honest proof. I turned the receipts face down and closed the folder. I could imagine the language of the trust now. Public purpose, educational programs, library funds, a community reading room. I thought of Thomas among young kids, showing them how to plant seeds or read a label. That was the legacy I wanted, something living, not just bank accounts. I sat in the kitchen as the light shifted toward evening, feeling the weight of the decision settling into me. The papers were evidence, yes, but they were also a roadmap. I could reroute the path we'd left for them, and maybe, if I was careful, protect what mattered. I walked to the window and watched the shadows lengthen across the yard, where the roses leaned toward the light. I felt clearer than I had in days. Not vindictive, no, just steady, like a person who had found the right tool for a difficult job. At the edge of that steadiness, a tremor of worry slid in. How would Marcus and Lena take it? Would they see the trust as protection or as punishment? Would their anger destroy what I hoped to build? I tucked the folder under my arm, stood up, and whispered, "Tomorrow I'll sign the first page." A car passed outside, headlights sweeping the porch. I looked at my reflection in the window, older, tired, but fixed with purpose. The knock at the door sounded like a verdict. "Mom, we need to talk." "Come in, Marcus." "You changed the papers." "I'm discussing options with Mr. Whitaker." "That's not how you do family." "You weren't at the funeral, Marcus." "That doesn't—" "It does. You missed his last goodbye." "That's unfair." "You weren't here." "You don't get to punish us." "I'm not punishing," I said. "I'm protecting what matters to me." "This is impulsive," he said, folding his arms like a suit of armor. "You're upset. Don't make decisions you'll regret. You were at a rooftop when he was being buried." "That was a business thing." A business thing that paid for your last vacation. That's low. I'm only saying what I saw. He stepped closer, voice dropping. If you try to cut us out, we'll contest it. You know the law, this isn't a bluff. I know the law, I replied slowly. And I know Thomas. He wouldn't have wanted his life to fund absence. You can't just reassign everything to some charity or to that kid. Noah helped. He sat nights when you were on calls. That kid? Give me a break. He was here. You weren't. There was a silence that held its breath. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past. The house felt suddenly small. You're serious? Marcus hissed. You'll risk family over this? I'll risk protecting a name. The front door opened again. Lena swept in, heels clicking. Derek stood behind her, polite smile, phone tucked away. Mom, Lena said, all sharp edges. We need to stop this. You weren't at the hospital, Lena. I was dealing with work. So was Marcus. I had deadlines. You had photos on your feed, Lena, laughing on a beach. That was a mental health break, she snapped. I was grieving in my own way. Grief doesn't look like a tan. You're attacking us. I'm trying to explain. Derek's voice was smooth. Evelyn, we're saddened. We just want fairness. Fairness? I repeated. You want fairness after years of taking? What is that supposed to mean? Lena demanded, voice rising. You gave us money when we needed it. You asked for money, I said. You didn't ask to be present. That's harsh. Is it? Look at these. I put the folder on the table and spread the papers out. Receipts, transfers, loans. You're bringing bank statements into this? Marcus said, incredulous. They're evidence of patterns. You can't use private family help as a weapon. I'm not weaponizing anything. I'm showing what was given and how it was treated. Noah shouldn't get everything. Lena said, eyes narrowing. He's our nephew. Our son could use support. My son had support, I said calmly. Over and over. You're wrong, Marcus said, voice cracking. You're deciding this out of grief. Grief sharpened truth, I said. It didn't invent it. Derek shifted, uncomfortable. This is turning ugly. It's been ugly for a long time, I replied. Only now I see it clearly. You can't just... Marcus began, then stopped. He cupped his forehead as if something struck him. You could ruin a lot by doing this. Then don't make me regret protecting what matters. Lena walked over, grabbed a sheet, scanned it fast. This check, when did you give this? 3 years ago. For your down payment. You promised it would be returned. It was a loan recorded. He signed it. I tapped the signature. You had time to repay. You didn't. It wasn't personal, she said. It was complicated. It was convenience for you, not a sacrifice for him. Mom, stop this righteous act. Marcus said, pleading now. We can talk it out. Meet halfway. What half is there? I asked. Half of absence? You're being extreme. I'm being faithful to memory. Derek intervened softly. Let's calm down. We can get mediation. I don't want mediation, I said. I want honesty. You'll force us into a legal fight, Marcus said. You know that will hurt everyone. Maybe pain is the only thing that wakes some people, I said. The words surprised me. They carried a small heat. You're choosing punishment, Lena accused. You're turning this into revenge. Call it what you like. I folded my hands. I called Whitaker because I needed to know how to make a legacy meaningful. A fund, a trust, not a free-for-all, not a bank account for people who won't sit at a bedside. You think you're the judge? Marcus spat. You think you get to decide who loved him more? No. I looked at Noah's name written on a note. I'm deciding who showed up. You're cruel, Lena said, stepping back. You're cruel and you're broken. Broken doesn't mean bad, I said. It means human. Derek cleared his throat. Evelyn, surely we can avoid lawyers. Let's talk, please. Talk? Marcus echoed. You mean like the talks before the checks? I mean the kind of talk where presence is part of the sentence. You can't do this, Marcus said, pulling his phone out. I'll call a lawyer. You can, I said, but the paperwork will show why. The receipts, the dates, the care notes. You made enemies of your own children. Lena said quietly, fury giving way to a hurt I recognized. I made a choice about a name I love, I replied. If that makes me an enemy, then I'll wear it. There was a long beat. Marcus's jaw tightened. Lena's lips trembled. Derek's polite mask slipped into frown. The house felt crowded with things that had been said too late. Fine, Marcus said at last, voice low. I'm calling now. He turned and left, phone already to his ear, fingers moving like they knew the numbers by habit. Mom, Lena said, voice softer, don't make my children pay for this. Think about Damani, about the family. She stepped toward me, a hand reaching out and then stopping. My first thought is Damani, I said. He was there. He cared. Lena's expression broke into something like regret, then impatience. You'll be sorry, she whispered, and walked out with Derek at her shoulder. The door closed. The house echoed. I sat down. The papers were still on the table, edges sharp. My hands trembled, but my voice felt steady. You did right, I told myself quietly. You did what you had to do. I thought of the hospital nights, the calls unanswered, the meals missed. I thought of Noah's small, steady acts. Legal threats hummed in the air like an oncoming storm. My chest felt tight, not from fear so much as from the ache of a choice that might change everything. Outside, a car engine idled and then drove away. The front garden swayed in the wind, roses bending but not breaking. I picked up a pen and wrote a note to Mr. Whitaker. Proceed. Draft the trust. A weight settled, heavy and honest. I brought the toolbox, he said, stepping onto the porch like he belonged there. Thank you, Noah. You sure you don't want me to come another day? No, today's fine. You look tired. I am. I made coffee. You did? French roast. Your favorite. You remembered. I always do. You didn't have to. I wanted to. He set the toolbox down carefully, like it was full of small promises. His hands were calloused, not fancy, the kind of hands that showed work, not show. He smiled in a way that made the house feel less heavy. You doing okay with the paperwork? He asked, glancing at the folder on the kitchen table. I met with Mr. Whitaker. He's drafting things. He called me last night. Said you were thinking about a trust. You answered his call? You were up late. I figured you might need someone awake with you. You didn't have to do that, Noah. You asked. He moved to the back steps, knelt, and started tightening a loose bolt on the porch railing. The rhythm of his work steadied me. I watched him measure, tighten, check, small practical things, just like Thomas used to do. You know why I'm thinking about the cabin, I said finally, watching him. Yeah, your husband talked about fixing it up. Said he wanted a place for the kids to learn stuff. Maybe a little library. He talked a lot, I smiled, remembering. About flowers, about books, about fixing a leaky roof. Noah, would you consider running something there? If I set up the trust for a community project, library, reading room, would you take the lead? He paused, hands on the rail. Grandma, I don't know. I work at the bookstore. I study community education. I don't have a lot of funds or time. You have more than you think. I'm 22. I've got student loans. Everyone has loans. He looked up at me then, honest and kind. You sure you want me? I don't want to be some token thing. I don't want this to split the family. You won't be a token. What if Marcus and Lena, they'll have to deal with their choices, I said. This isn't about punishing. It's about making something that matters. No offense, but setting me up in front of this could make me the bad guy. You'd be doing work that matters. And you'd do it quietly. He wiped his palms on his jeans. What would it actually be? A room with books? Programs? A place where kids can come after school? A reading corner? A small computer? Maybe gardening workshops? Thomas loved the idea of kids learning with their hands. That sounds nice. It's his name on it. It should be honest to him. Noah, could you manage volunteers? Write a plan? I can try. I've been helping organize book drives at the store. That's what I mean. Try. He laughed, a little nervous. You always know how to push me. I learned from your grandfather. He paused, breathing in. Okay, if you set up the trust with clear rules, and if there's a budget that's real, not just promises, I'll do it. I'll leave that to Mr. Whitaker. I want to protect the money so it can't be taken. You sure about that? Yes, I'm tired of watching things be assumed. I want something that keeps giving. Will you tell me the numbers? I will. There's enough to start small. A renovation, permits, initial books, and a bit saved for running costs. That helps. What worries you most? I asked. That it becomes about drama, not the kids. That people use the name to get attention. You think my children would do that? He looked down. I don't know, Grandma. Families get messy. I know. Would you be in it? Like, around? I will be. Not to boss, to support. That'd help. He stood up, dusting his knees. The porch looked steadier with him on it. I could see him as a leader, not from titles but from how he treated things. Carefully, respectfully. You should write a plan, I said. Not a speech. A plan with steps, budgets, a timeline. That way it's clear what this is. I can do that. I'll draw up something by next week. You'll need permits, I added. And an electrician. And maybe a local librarian to volunteer. I know a retired librarian, Miss Carter. Perfect. Ask her. He rubbed his thumb along a screw. I don't want this to be about money, Grandma. I want it to help people. That's why I want you. He hesitated then, the worry that had been hiding in his eyes finally stepping forward. Promise me one thing. What? If this starts hurting you, if it brings more fights, tell me. I won't be stubborn. I'll step back if it's too much. I promise. Okay. He closed the toolbox and stood. I'll go get that plan started. Bring coffee next time, I said, and we both smiled. The small joke felt like a bridge. As he walked to his car, I called after him, Noah, one more thing. Yeah? Thank you. For being here. He turned, gave a quick wave, and the driveway swallowed him. The house felt lighter in the way a room does after someone opens a window. Sitting at the kitchen table, I wrote numbers in a notebook, renovation estimate, permit fees, initial books, modest running costs. Each line anchored the idea in something practical. The trust language Mr. Whitaker suggested could specify age-based disbursements, a cap on administrative fees, and a clause naming community projects as the primary use. I folded the plan into a small packet and slid it into the folder with the receipts. My hands didn't shake like they had before. This was a tangible next step. Not revenge, not spite, a seed. There was a soft knock at the door. I opened it to find Rosa on the porch, hands empty this time. How is the porch? She asked. Fixed for now, I said. She'll help. She nodded toward the driveway where Noah's car had just disappeared. That boy has good bones. He does. I looked at the roses, the way they held their heads even as the evening crept in. My mind keeps worrying about Marcus and Lena, I admitted. If they see this as a slight, they may at first, Rosa said. People notice change and panic, but sometimes change makes them better. What if it just makes them angrier? I asked. Then you'll deal with that, she said plainly. You don't do this for them. Noah's plan began to feel less like a risk and more like an honest duty. I could picture the cabin with light spilling through new windows, kids bent over picture books, a small sign that read, Thomas Hart Community Room. My chest loosened a bit with that image. But even as hope settled, a small fear lingered. The project would make things visible. People who were quiet would notice. Those who felt entitled might lash out. I closed my eyes and remembered Thomas teaching a child how to plant a seed. He'd said, you give the soil a chance and it does the rest. I whispered to the empty kitchen, let's give it a chance. The evening light dimmed. I folded the papers, checked the locks, and set the folder on the table like a pact. You actually wrote a letter? I did. It looked different. Handwritten. I thought maybe words on a screen felt too cold. I didn't expect an apology with a return address. I didn't write it for applause. You sounded honest. I tried. You could have called. I know. I thought about that a lot. What did it say? That I was sorry I missed it. That I'm sorry for how things turned out. That I want to help. Help how? Whatever you need. I can use some contacts for permits. Maybe speed up the cabin approvals. That's practical. Is that enough? It's a start. She came by this morning, Rosa said, setting a bowl of soup on the table. She did? She did. No fanfare, no cameras. She actually showed up? She knocked like someone who meant it. You should have seen her. She looked smaller somehow. Did she bring her husband? No, just her. She offered to run social media for the cabin. She offered that? She did. Said she wants to help get book donations and volunteers. That's good. Is it real? She stayed for an hour. She listened. She listened? She did. She didn't make excuses. She said she was ashamed. Shame looks different on her. She asked how she could earn back trust. Did you tell her? I told her to start by showing up. Not with posts, but with hands. She nodded. She said she could learn. She said she wanted to be better. That matters. She left a card. She left a jar of soup. She cleaned the sink before she left. She's doing dishes now? She did. I can't imagine she stayed long enough to clean. She did. Small things, Evie. Small things add up. I'm wary. You have reason to be. I do. Marcus called last night, Rosa added quietly. He did. He sounded awkward. Said he'd found his handwriting. Said he'd been thinking. What did he say exactly? He said, I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know how to be there. I want to help with the permits. That's polite. He asked if he could use his contacts at the city. Did you tell him yes? I said yes, but under conditions. What conditions? That any work he arranges goes through proper bids. No shortcuts. He balked? A little. But then he said he understands. People change fast when their schedules slow down. Or when reality hits. He offered to talk to the contractor he knows. Said he'd pull some favors. Favors are always a gamble. I told him the project needs transparency. No personal gains, no marketing stunts. He agreed. He said he'd send an email with names tonight. He might actually do it. He started with a small step. Small steps are good. He called from his car. He sounded like he'd rehearsed the apology. Apologies rehearsed still count sometimes. He said, tell Noah I'll help with permits. Tell him yourself. I will. Noah will want to know if there's a catch. He always does. He's honest in ways they aren't. He's the sort of man who measures tools twice. He'll ask for clear budgets. He'll want oversight. Good. Oversight keeps things honest. We also met Gabriel today. The retired teacher? He came by the library, then the cabin site. He offered volunteer time. What did he say? He said he'd run reading hours, help set up programs for kids, and train volunteers. That's exactly the kind of steady help we need. He brought a box of old children's books. And a cardigan. He smelled like the schoolhouse. He smells like honesty. He does. Any word from Lena? Not first. She came the second day with coffee instead of grandstanding. She did? She apologized. Not dramatic. Just, I messed up. I want to help. How did that feel? Odd. She seemed smaller, like she'd taken off armor. She offered social outreach? Yes. She said she could manage volunteers, build an events calendar, handle donations. That's a big job. She said she wanted something meaningful to do. Did you trust her? Not at first. But she asked what tasks were boring. She wanted the stuff most people avoid. That's a good sign. She stayed to hang flyers. She organized a list of potential donors. She used her network without making it loud. She's learning humility. Maybe. You sound hopeful. I am. Cautiously. Cautiously is the right word. I worried it's the will that pushes them to change. It might be. Does that matter if the results are honest? It matters to me. I wanted them to show up because they cared, not because a document pushed them. People don't always become perfect overnight. No, but they can become present. That will do more for Thomas than money ever could. They fixed a broken hinge today. Who? Marcus and a contractor he called. They tightened the porch supports. And Lena? She organized a donation drive at her office. She did that? She did. Quietly, no selfies. She actually packed boxes. That's progress. She cried while packing. You saw that? I did. How did you feel? Strange. I expected defiance, not tears. Tears are messy and useful. They are. Paige came by too. Paige? Yeah, Noah's architect friend. She drew up preliminary plans, more than sketches, actual measurements. She's practical, isn't she? She is. She pointed out we need permits for structural changes and suggested an accessible ramp. An accessible ramp? For older neighbors to come in. For kids with strollers. That's thoughtful. She's the kind to ask, what will make this useful for everyone? She's rare. She is. You said earlier you'd watch for sincerity. I am. How will you tell? When actions keep happening without an audience. And if they stop when the cameras turn off? Then we'll know. Then we'll have to decide what to do next. We'll cross that bridge if we come to it. There's a letter from Marcus on the table. It's different from the call. In what way? It has a line where he admits he'd prioritize deals over family. That's something. Then there's a paragraph where he asks to be included, not in the money, but in the work. You'll let him? I will. If he keeps promises. You're generous. I'm tired of being the bank. I want to be the gardener. That's an image I like. I do too. He stopped by today after the contractor left. What did he say? He said, I didn't know how to start being sorry. I'll start with this. And? I told him to bring tools, not ego. He laughed. A little. It felt real. You told Lena to organize donors. She's organizing a community drive next Saturday. Will people show up? They already called to volunteer. Some of her colleagues said they'd bring books. That's progress. Small, steady things. Do you believe their change will last? I want to. I'm letting the work decide. There's Gabriel, Paige, Noah, real hands. And receipts, records, oversight. And people who remember Thomas without needing the spotlight. That's the real test. The trust will need clear language. Mr. Whitaker will handle that. I trust him. So do I. The soup is cooling, Rosa said. Eat. I will. I watched them work, the slow returning of habits that mattered. I felt relief, but also the old caution. The past had taught me not to hurry belief. A breeze pushed through the kitchen window. The rosebush outside bent its head. I traced the edge of a napkin with my finger and felt the fragile rhythm of reconciliation. Small acts can be honest or performative. Time will tell which these are. For now, people are showing up. The house sounds busier. The cabin plans are taking shape. I set the papers back in the folder and closed it with my hand. It's ready to come down, Noah said, stepping back from the sagging beam. Don't take my word for it, I answered. Tell me what you see. The floor's rotten by the back door. The rafters need sistering. We can save the original window frames. That's good. Ms. Carter will volunteer to catalog books. Gabriel called? He did. He's bringing storybooks from the old school stash. I remember those, I said. Thomas used to read from worn pages until the children begged for more. Noah, are we doing demolition today? Priya asked, holding her tablet like a map. Yes, but carefully. We want to keep as much as we can. Keep the soul, Priya said, looking through the broken panes. Not just the boards. We'll keep the porch swing, I said before I could stop myself. He'd like that, Noah smiled. Let's make a list, Gabriel announced, clipboard in hand. Kids' corner, volunteer sign-up, donation box, safety tape. Safety tape first, I replied. We can't have anyone hurt. He's right, Marcus said, arriving with a toolbox and a reluctant grin. I talked to the contractor. He's agreed to donate time. You came early, I said. I could not sit at home, Marcus admitted. This felt right. Good, Lena added as she lugged a box of donated cushions. I set up a drop-off at the office. People were surprisingly generous. That's helpful, I said. Thank you. Heavy lifting is my part, Marcus said, reaching for the old beams. I'll get my crew to scaffold this afternoon. No shortcuts, Priya warned. Permits first. We've got permits, Noah answered. Whitaker sorted it. You actually got those through? Marcus sounded surprised. We did, I said. No shortcuts. Everything done properly. The community is watching, Gabriel commented, eyes bright. They like seeing hands, not just talk. A neighbor brought a ladder, Lena said, wiping sweat from her brow. Old Mr. Hargrove, he's 78 and brought a ladder. He can still climb? Marcus chuckled. He can, and he did. Good, I said. We need stamina and kindness in equal measure. Where do you want the reading nook? Priya asked, standing with measured calm. By that window where the light comes in, I said. That's where Thomas used to sit in the afternoons. Perfect, Priya said, sketching quickly. Low shelves, beanbags, a little desk for sign-ups. No noisy carpets, Gabriel warned. We want foot traffic, not tripping. Noted. A neighbor walked up, carrying a box labeled children's books. For the library, she said simply. Thank you, Noah said. Come on in. We'll make a place for them. Mrs. Hart, the neighbor added, glancing at me. We wanted to do something. You already are, I said, voice small. No, you started this, she replied. We just bring the rest. I watched people move, Marcus hauling beams awkwardly but steady, Lena organizing volunteers at a small table, Gabriel kneeling to check a loose board with the patience of a teacher. The cabin smelled of sawdust and paint and old paper, the scent of making something new. You sure about the layout? Marcus asked Priya, wiping his hands on his jeans. Yes? More light? Fewer corners? Accessibility ramp by the door. An accessible ramp? I asked, surprised. Older neighbors, strollers, everyone should get in, Priya said. This isn't just for kids. It's for the neighborhood. That's thoughtful, I said. Noah, do you want to give an orientation? Lena asked. People are asking how they can help. No, let Marcus handle the big stuff, Noah answered. I'll take volunteers. I can do check-in, Lena offered. I'll train with Gabriel. Okay, Noah said. Gabriel, can you teach the volunteers how to read aloud? Props, voices, pacing. Absolutely, Gabriel said, smiling. We'll do short sessions. Practice before the kids arrive. Everything feels organized, I said, looking at the list that started to form on a scrap of cardboard. It's a lot of work, Marcus admitted. But it feels important. That's because it's honest work, I replied. It's not about photos or applause. Speaking of photos, Lena said, embarrassed, I'm cutting back on posting. Just updates for volunteers. I want it to be about service, not selfies. You mean it? I asked. I do, she said, eyes sincere. It's different when you actually touch the books. Small acts piled up. A neighbor stripping old paint, a retired electrician checking wiring, Priya measuring and sketching, Noah coordinating shifts on a scrap of cardboard. At one point, Lena sat on the porch step and handed out granola bars to the volunteers. Her hands trembled slightly as she tied a box closed. Thank you, she said to Gabriel, who packed books with care. I never realized how much work this is. It's steady, Gabriel said. And it teaches patience. Noted, she said. I'll remember. Noah, can you show them where to stack donations? Marcus asked. No problem, he answered, leading a small group inside. I moved through the cabin, touching the rough wood, remembering Thomas's hands on a spade. I felt a strange mix, grief still raw, but softened by the murmur of work. Each hammer strike sounded like a small repair, not only to the building, but to something inside us. Do you think they'll come? I asked Noah quietly as he passed by. Who? He replied, wiping sawdust from his arms. The kids. The neighbors. They already called to volunteer, he said. Ms. Carter has a list of schools. We'll do a soft opening, a reading for the little ones next Saturday. A test, I said. A first step. Yes, he said. If the kids laugh and the parents bring chairs, that's a good sign. Do you feel ready? I asked. No, he admitted, but ready enough. Ready enough is what matters, I said. An older woman came with a stack of quilts. For the kids' corner, she said, setting them down carefully. My church made these. Thank you, Noah said, eyes wet. This will be warm. Isn't this what he wanted? Marcus asked, pausing with a sheet of plywood on his shoulder. He talked about a place like this, I said. He said it would be good to make a little corner where stories and hands meet. Then let's get it right, Marcus said. By late afternoon, the floor was cleared, beams reinforced, one of the old windows polished and rehung. Priya walked through with a level, smiling. Light flows in, she said. This will be beautiful. Beautiful, Lena echoed, sitting among cushions, exhausted but at peace. Do you ever regret turning it into public space? Marcus asked suddenly, making family property something else? Sometimes, I said honestly. But I think this honors him. It teaches what he taught without making it private. No more bank for them? Marcus asked, half joking, half hopeful. No more bank, I said. This is a different currency. Meaning? He asked. Meaning that grows, I replied. People began to linger as the day faded. Neighbors watching, curious kids peeking through the doorway, a teacher from the local school asking about weekly programs. The sight of volunteers stacking books, of small hands folding quilts, of a retired teacher planning story sets felt like a balm. Noah, Priya called, will be ready to present the design on Wednesday. Good, he said. We'll finalize the layout and order the shelves. Are you nervous? Lena asked him. Terrified, he said, making them laugh. You'll do fine, I said. You'll do what Thomas would have wanted. Simple, steady, kind. No pressure, Marcus muttered, but his eyes were soft. As dusk settled, we taped a sign over the door. Thomas Hart Community Room, soft opening Saturday. It looked small and perfect in the failing light. I stood on the porch and watched shadows lengthen across the yard. Hammers slowed. Voices softened. The cabin hummed with a kind of focused peace I hadn't felt in months. I felt grateful, but a caution pulled at me. Old habits don't vanish because beams are straightened. I'd seen people change and then slip back. This felt different, quieter, but I wanted proof. Noah? I asked. Yes? Are we ready for a test? For the children? We are, he said. We'll learn from what goes wrong. We'll keep asking people to come without promises. Good, I answered. Let it be small and honest, he nodded. The evening wrapped around us like a shawl. The first event would come soon, an ordinary act that might tell us whether this place could hold more than books. The morning felt oddly honest, cool air, bright sun, the cabin smelling of paint and sawdust. I stood on the porch, ribbon in my hands, heart doing its small, stubborn drum. Looks good, doesn't it? Noah said, voice low. It looks like someone cared, I answered. People showed up earlier than I thought. That's a good surprise. Grandma, are you nervous? A little. You'll be fine. You always say that. I still believe it. Noah, grab the scissors. No problem. Marcus? I'll stand with you for the ribbon. You came early. Couldn't sleep. Do you want the plaque read after? If you want me to say something, I will. You will? Yeah, I think I should. Okay. Lena appeared with a basket of paper crowns. Where do you want the kids' corner? She asked, cheerful but quiet. By the big window, I said. Light there. Perfect, she replied, setting down craft supplies. Rosa made coffee, Gabriel announced, carrying a thermos. She did? She did. She always does. Good, we'll need it. Mrs. Hart? A small voice called. A little girl peered in the doorway, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Come in, sweetie, Lena said, kneeling down. We've got stories. Are there cookies? The girl asked seriously. Always cookies, Noah said, and she beamed. I never thought I'd see this many people here, Marcus whispered, watching neighbors drift in. People heard, I said. They cared. You did this, Marcus said. You started it. We all did, I corrected. You showed up. Noah? Yes. Are you ready? No, but I'm ready enough. Good enough is what gets things done. He's humble, Gabriel said to me softly, like the man he's named after. My husband didn't like speeches, I said. He liked small things done well. Then let's do small things well today, Priya said, clipboard in hand. Grandma, ribbon time? Noah asked, scissors gleaming. Okay. Noah, you cut, Marcus said, stepping forward. You lead. No, you do it with me, I said, surprising myself. Together? Marcus asked. Together. Ready? Noah asked, hands steady on the ribbon. Ready? 3, 2, Noah, a voice called from the crowd. We brought books. Bring them in, Noah said, smiling. Leave them by the shelf. Now, I heard Marcus say, for a few words. This plaque, he began, voice rough with something that sounded like truth, isn't just metal. It's a reminder. We got busy. We forgot the small things. My father, your husband, taught me that. I'm sorry. You don't have to make a speech, I said, throat tight. I do, he said. I needed to say it out loud. You're saying it now, Lena added, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. We lost time. We have some now, Marcus replied. We'll do the work. Noah, your moment, Gabriel said, nudging him gently. Noah, I'm proud of you, he said softly. You pulled people together. No pressure, he joked, then looked at me. Grandma, thank you for trusting me. I trusted Thomas first, I answered. Then you. Let me read this one, Gabriel said, taking the plaque. Thomas Hart, who believed books and gardens were places where dreams grow. That's him, I whispered. Grandma, story time's in 10 minutes, Lena said. Want to help? I can read, I said. If you want me to. Yes, several voices said at once. Okay then. The room filled with the sound of children settling, the rustle of pages, the low murmur of neighbors swapping memories. I sat on a small chair and opened a book Noah had chosen, one Thomas used to read out loud, a book with a dog on the cover and pages already softened by fingers. Once upon a time, I began, and the words felt like a bridge. The children leaned in. I felt Thomas there in the way my voice softened and found the rhythm he always used. Grandma, why did you make this? A boy asked during a pause. Because your neighborhood needed a place to listen, I said. And because my husband liked kids who asked questions. Did he plant things? Another asked. All the time, I replied. He planted tomatoes and stories. Noah watched the room like someone who'd learned to hold things steady. Lena passed out crowns, her hands steady. Marcus sat in the back, hands folded, eyes wet but focused. After the reading, Gabriel stood and started a small program. Song, a puppet, volunteer sign-ups. People stayed, chatting in low tones, bringing chairs from cars, carrying more books inside. The smell of coffee and warm cookies drifted through the doorway. "You did good," Rosa said, handing me a paper cup. "We did this together," I replied. "It's more than you hoped," she said. "Look at them." Children clustered on the floor. An elder couple sat in the sun by the window, fingers entwined. A teacher from the local school took notes about weekly visits. Eyes met mine with gratitude and something like relief. "Did you ever doubt this would work?" Marcus asked, sitting beside me quietly. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But I believed there was a chance. Seeing it now," he said, trailing off. "It's a small miracle," Lena whispered. "It feels like one." Noah came back holding a box. "Mrs. Hart, someone left a shirt." "A shirt?" I repeated. "A neighbor brought it." "From Thomas?" I asked, voice caught. "No, just a scrap. They said he wore this in the garden." "Bring it here," I said. He passed it to me, a faded strip of cloth with dirt still in the seam. I held it like a relic, smelling faintly of earth and old sun. "Why'd they bring that?" Lena asked. "Because they wanted you to have something of him," Noah said. "To remember that this all started with his hands." I pressed the fabric to my face and something loosened, years of holding back that I hadn't known were bound so tight. "You know," Gabriel said softly, "this will need steady hands. Not just money." "We know," I said. "We'll keep it honest. People will come and go," Priya added. "But the design will stay." "Noah will keep it running," Marcus said. "He'll make sure it's fair." Noah looked at him with something like trust, Lena noted, surprised. "He earned it," I said. A neighbor stood and proposed a small celebration, a potluck at the end of the month to raise funds and awareness. Voices agreed. Hands signed a volunteer sheet. The room buzzed with small plans and bigger promises. I felt a swell of relief, but it was braided with sorrow. The day had not erased what we lost. It had simply given it shape, a living thing, small and fragile but growing. "You okay?" Noah asked, noticing my pause. "Yes," I said. "More okay than before." "You look lighter." "I do." "Good." As the crowd thinned and the last child waved goodbye, I folded the scrap of fabric and set it beside the plaque. I touched the metal with a fingertip and felt the warmth of the day lingering. A woman from down the street, Mrs. Taylor, stayed behind and took my hand. "He would be pleased," she said simply. "Thank you," I said. "For everything." She squeezed my hand. "You gave this place life." I watched the volunteers stack chairs, watched Lena laugh with a mother about a future story hour, watched Marcus help a neighbor carry a box to the car without fanfare. The project had become more than timber and paint. It was a quiet gathering of people trying to be better. But even as night settled, a small question hovered in my chest. Hope felt real, but fragile. "It's been a good morning," Marcus said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Busy," I replied, folding the edge of my napkin. "But good busy. You seem calmer these days." "I sleep better." "That's good to hear." "You called more this month." I tried. "You showed up last week for the mentorship session." I did. No speeches, just time. That's all I could manage. Noah's been doing a fine job. He has. He's organized, actually. He listens. That's a talent these days. "Lena stopped by this morning," Rosa added, carrying a small tray of lemon bars. "She brought extra chairs." "She's been baking after the events," I said. Quieter about it now. No posts. "She looked different," Marcus observed. "Less staged. She's been here every Saturday for sign-ups." "That's real work," Marcus said. I thought I'd never see that. "You've helped with permits," I told him. "And you actually stayed to move boxes." I did. "Thank you. You don't have to say it like I saved the world." "You didn't save the world," I smiled. "You helped build a room that might." "Noah, grab the sign-up sheet," Gabriel called from inside. "I'm coming," he answered. "We've got 2 new volunteers from the high school." "Great," Gabriel said. "We'll start the Junior Readers program next month." "That's ambitious," Priya said, studying a clipboard. but it's doable. We need structure, Pastor Ruth said as she stepped onto the porch, hands folded. They asked me to help with civic partnerships. You know how to do that, I said. I've organized a few small programs at the church. I'd like to link the library with the after-school clubs. That would help, Noah replied. We need consistency. Consistency builds trust, Pastor Ruth said. People show up when they know someone else will be there tomorrow. Is that what you think we lacked? Marcus asked quietly. Presence, Pastor Ruth said. Not just money or comments, but presence. No one ever taught me to be present like this, Marcus said, voice low. I thought success meant doing more, being busier. That's easy to confuse, I replied. It's what we were told. I can see that now, Lena said, stepping closer. I can see what I missed. You came back, I said. That counts. I wanted to help with the children's programs, she said. I can handle outreach and small events. Your energy at the craft table was useful today, Gabriel said. Kids like your pace. I'll keep it simple, she promised. No posts, just sign-ups and calls. Noah? Pastor Ruth asked. How's your volunteer training going? We've got 4 trained readers, he said. 2 teens from the school, Mrs. Carter and Gabriel. I'm pairing them with mentors. That's excellent, she said. Mentorship reduces dropout. It gives kids someone to count on. We're planning a mentorship fair next month, Noah added. To recruit more volunteers. I'll bring snacks, Lena offered. And flyers. I'll make sure we get to the schools. You're all doing this, I said, looking at the group gathered, the loose mix of volunteers and family. It doesn't erase what happened, but it changes the pattern. That's the point, Pastor Ruth said. Repair takes time. I still get nervous, Marcus admitted. People talk. Lawyers talk. We documented everything, I said. Mr. Whitaker kept careful notes. The trust language is clear. That doesn't stop people from being upset, Lena added. But things are quieter now. Quiet is good, Gabriel said. It lets the work show its face. You ever regret the choice? Marcus asked, eyes on my hands. Sometimes, I answered honestly. At first it felt like punishment. Then it felt like protection. Now it feels like possibility. Both? Pastor Ruth asked. Both, I said. I protected a name, but I also wanted justice for the way things had been taken for granted. That's fair, Lena said softly. I'm sorry it took this to wake me. Apology is only the first step, I told her. The doing matters. I get that now, she said. I'm trying to show up the way you need. You are, Noah said. You've run 3 book drives. You organized 2 story hours. I'm learning, she replied. Slowly. You all changed in small ways, I said. That's the difference. You wrote a letter for them once, Pastor Ruth said, looking at me. Did you ever expect to not send it? I wrote it as a testimony, I said. At one point, I thought they'd need it after I was gone. Now I'm not sure it needs to be read. Why not? Marcus asked. Because the work is starting to say it, I replied. The trust, the programs, the people showing up, those are my words now. That's powerful, Pastor Ruth said. Actions speak. They outlast a page. Noah, how's the mentorship going? I asked. Good. A few kids signed up for homework help, he answered. And Marcus helped arrange a weekend session at the business center. That was useful, Marcus said. I can offer some mentorship on resumes and interview practice. Real help, Gabriel said. That's what kids need. I did a session last week, Lena chimed in. I brought books from work and sat with the kids. They asked about careers. I was honest about mistakes. That honesty helps, Pastor Ruth said. It models humility. It's odd, Marcus said. I used to think pride was the boss. Now I see humility opens doors. It took a lot to get us here, I said. But look at the faces in the room. They're different, Gabriel said. Less posture, more presence. They remember Thomas, Rosa said. They mention his garden all the time. People bring seeds, Lena said with a small laugh. We're planting a little garden out back. That was his dream, I said. A place where kids could learn both reading and growing. We're doing both, Noah said. Garden club meets Fridays. Good. I took a slow breath. The creak of the porch boards sounded like a familiar step. Did you ever think you'd forgive? Marcus asked, voice unsure. Forgive who? I returned. Us. Forgiveness is complicated, I said. It doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace over the ache. I've been reworking what peace looks like. That sounds like a journey, Pastor Ruth said. One step at a time. It is, I smiled. One step, small and steady. We're committed, Lena said. I mean it this time. Noah, do you trust them? Pastor Ruth asked gently. I trust their hands more than their words, he said. We'll see how consistent they are. That's wise, I said. Trust but watch. We'll watch together, Rosa added. I stood and walked to the small table where my letter lay folded. I ran my fingers over the paper, thinking about the lines I'd written in the night, words of hurt, of love, of warning. The ink felt dry and less urgent now. Actions filled the space the letter had held. You thinking about sending it? Marcus asked. Maybe not, I said slowly. Maybe I'll keep it in case I need to remind them. But today the choice feels different. Today the proof is here, the kids, Gabriel's program, Pastor Ruth's partnerships. That's enough for now, Pastor Ruth said. Let time speak. I like that, Lena murmured. Let time show us who we are. I looked at the faces around me, flaws and all, and felt a quiet reckoning settle in. I'd chosen a path that felt like both justice and care. It had been hard. It had cost me private comfort, but it had also opened a new way to honor Thomas, not by keeping his name in a vault, but by planting it in the neighborhood. Do you feel peace? Noah asked. Not complete peace, I replied, but a soft kind of strength. That will do, he said. As dusk folded into the yard, laughter rose from the garden where children chased a stray ball. Pages rustled inside the cabin. The trust fund sat on paper, the programs on calendars, the volunteers on shifts. I folded my letter again and slid it back into the drawer. Not a relic, but a reminder. Did I choose punishment or protection? I asked the quiet air, answering myself. Both, I said aloud and meant it. If this story moved you, share where you're listening from and subscribe for more true life journeys of loss, courage, and quiet repair, because sometimes healing doesn't come from grand gestures, but from the small, steady choices that rebuild what was once broken.